Seattle data guy, Denver data dude, Ben Rogojan. What's up, dude?
Not much. How's it going, Joe? How's it over on the other side?
On the other side of the Rockies.
On the side of the
Yeah.
Rockies. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's going good, man. It's pretty cold out, but I was just in your city actually yesterday, and it's freezing there, dude. I don't know how you live there, but
Yeah. I don't know. My wife refuses to move to Seattle, so
mm,
we are here. And she says Texas is too hot. So, you know,
yeah, I don't know if you like it that much there, but
yeah.
depends where you
So
live, I guess. That's cool. Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, it's good to catch up, man. Yeah, I guess what for people who don't know who you are, for like the five people in the world who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
I saw someone from Cloudera recently post one of my articles, and they're like, "Yeah, this is written by some person named Seattle Data Guy. I can't find them on LinkedIn, but." So
Oh, that's funny.
there are plenty of people who don't know I exist, which is the way I like it. I don't think I'd want any more level of notoriety than I really currently have at
I
this point.
understand.
But yeah, I mean, like for people who don't know who I am, I mean, I go by the Seattle Data Guy, but basically, I focus on helping people do or set up their data infrastructure, do end-to-end consulting. Also, put out a ton of content under the Seattle Data Guy. So if you look Substack, YouTube, you'll find me pretty much on every platform except for really TikTok. I haven't really jumped on
Mm.
that fully. It's just another medium. So there's that. What was I thinking? Other than that, let's see. Worked at Facebook for a little bit. Did healthcare analytics for a little bit. But now I just do consulting. So
That's
that's
cool.
me.
You're on your own. You're a free
On my
man.
own.
Speaking of TikTok, I'm curious about that because it seems like it's like I think Zach Wilson's had some success on it, and for the
Yeah.
audience, we're all friends. The question I get often is, "Hey, do you like CL Data Guy and Zach Wilson?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're all like really good friends." Like, I think there's like a big rivalry with us, but anyway. But TikTok definitely seems like it's like the crack pipe of all crack pipes for content. So
Well, I mean, until we perfect AI generated content, and then
yeah,
like you just get literally exactly the content you want at the moment you want it, kind of level of content. I mean, yeah, the other day, I don't know if this was spoofed. But like someone did a Johnny Cash version of one of the Taylor Swift songs,
mm,
and it sounded perfect. Like if you heard it, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, Johnny Cash is singing a song."
right.
So I mean, yeah, if there's some sort of tribute song you wanted to hear or something that for an artist that no longer exists, I mean that is something that exists soon,
Hmm.
So yeah.
Interesting. What do you think that does to content?
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of like thoughts there. I feel like I I'm not sure I understand how creative uh essentially whatever models we use can be. So like obviously, okay, we can spoof off of things we've done, but what can we like, does that limit what can happen in the future? Like can it come up with new styles, new things? Because generally I think artists and media tend to capture like something about the current zeitgeist, and that's why we generally, that's why someone becomes the it thing of an era. And so in order to do that, I feel like you need to like be part of the zeitgeist in order to understand and write about it and create about it. So
Mm,
I am curious about like that, like maybe you can still, if you create models that can kind of capture what people are feeling in the moment, they can create the songs that people need to hear in that moment. But that's I think the gap that I'm not confident I understand.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how this relates to the type of content that we do. I mean, the type of content we do is actually very, very different, I would say, but we speak to generally the same audience, which are data engineers and people kind of in that periphery. But I feel like anymore, like the content you produce, for example, is really what people gravitate towards, right? And same with Zach and on YouTube and video content, namely. But you're almost like a tastemaker in some ways. You're sort of saying like this is probably what we should be talking about, right? So I'm curious, if AI generated content could not only sort of I suppose be a mirror on the world, but also maybe drive the conversation, right? That would be fascinating. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I do think about that too as well, because like one, like what does this do for content that is more your traditional like how-to content,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Where the reason you wrote that was for basically SEO reasons or something similar. And so, I mean, in all actuality, now like ChatGPT to a degree can do that, right? Like, um, I was using ChatGPT recently to like because I had to go through a ton of articles, and so I was like using it to just help me go through tons of articles instead of me having to read, you know, hundreds of pages. I'm like, look, I just need to know what happened, and
right.
that's really it. So it does kind of bring up that interesting point where it's like, okay, but why would I need someone to write content if I can get it in a faster way, right? Like right now, I would say that ChatGPT is way too verbose. Like whenever you ask it to write anything, it's like a 10th grader trying to fill out the 2,000 word essay kind of thing. Maybe that's because of the fact that SEO is that way as well, right? Like often
Yeah.
people are like, if I write a 2,000 word post, it ranks higher. So maybe there's just this weird tendency for verbose writing, but yeah.
But you kind of prompted to a TLDR too, right? And but it's also I think making it readable for and captivating for a reader, if you know what I mean, like somebody because
Yeah.
attention's like super low. So, um, and you can see this on LinkedIn posts actually. I think I see some people using ChatGPT. You can tell because it's not their writing style. If you know what they're writing like before, and the other thing is
Yeah.
LinkedIn now has the AI
Yeah.
generated responses, which I don't know. You can also become a top voice on LinkedIn just by collaborating on the articles now. So that's
Yes. Yes.
it's like the
Yes.
nice participation trophy. So
Yeah. Which again, I've had my I think I shared a small opinion about because it's like, yeah, it's
mm,
just like what does this mean? And then like, yeah, like is this just you, using like people again, like you're trying to essentially gather people's voices to add more color to your future articles that would just be written by a bot in the future. Because that's really like I think that's the current step that a lot of people are trying to take. It's like, okay, we'll have a bot write the article, and then we'll have a person edit it and add
mhm.
in like that human feeling. So it's faster and okay, that can make sense. But like then getting to the next point where it's like, no, but now we want to capture essentially the essence of a person. The same way they're
Right.
trying to capture like background characters or, possibly in future actual actors and like who owns that person essentially, right? Like
Mm,
and then they're and what they look like and so yeah, that's why I'm not a huge fan. Like LinkedIn, I think is slowly starting to go the way that most every social media platform goes, which is like they need to make more money and they need to like I think people are finding it harder to like stick out with the algorithm. Like I feel
yeah.
like in the past, like there were things that worked and you knew they worked in the algorithm, and now it's like okay, they'll sometimes work, they sometimes won't. I noticed recently actually, sometimes like how like everyone's like, oh, we won't put the link in the comment. Oh, sorry, we won't put the link in the post because like LinkedIn doesn't like that. We'll put the link in the comment below. What I've noticed LinkedIn sometimes does is it will like essentially hide the comment, like when you have to like say like, oh, actually you need to click like most recent to see all of the comments.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it won't show it. So I've noticed they've started to do that with some people I know. Like it's like
Mm,
either they're testing it out or I don't know what the reasoning is, but I've had to do that a few times where they're like comment below or the link is below, and I had to like actually like say like, oh, reorganize it because it doesn't just show it normally.
interesting.
Yeah.
I'm starting to
So
see that too. I think friends with large LinkedIn followings, for example, they're complaining they aren't getting the type of engagement they used to. I mean, hell, one guy I know he's got probably some of the most LinkedIn followers of anybody. I'm not going to name names, but it's over 1.5 million followers, and
yeah.
we're hanging out. He was saying that in his case, he definitely seems like LinkedIn has an open vendetta against him because he's like driving so much activity that they aren't making money off of. That I
Yeah.
think they probably had a word with him actually, and it's interesting. And I think it's kind of the incentive to build your own platform, kind of like what you did on Substack, and what I'm hoping to do with Substack as well on other platforms. But
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah. I mean, and that kind of happened to me on Medium too. And that's why
oh,
like
interesting.
Substack, yeah, well, like, less of like Medium doing that, but just more me realizing that like, hey, I can have 60,000 followers on Medium, but if there's an article that like, whatever reason, it doesn't click with the algorithm, no one's going to see it. And that's really kind of a crappy situation to be in, because it's like, well, why did I work hard to get this number that
Yeah.
has no value, right? I think I saw like Alex Friedberg once have like a post that got like 10 like reactions to it. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, of all of his like whatever he's at, um only 10 people responded. Like out
Yeah.
of just sheer like goodwill of people liking Alex, there will be more people liking a post. So there's something there where it's like, that doesn't make sense to me.
Hmm.
But again, it's happened before. I think Facebook used like, right, like when Facebook first started, it was like amazing if you were smart enough to capture it. It's like, yeah, you got tons of free engagement.
Yeah.
And then eventually they're like, no, 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 no. We need to make money off this engagement. We're going to put a ton of ads and, make sure.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay.
I heard LinkedIn was the same way, like back in like 2014, 2015 timeframe. Like it was super easy to get followers, and engagement was super high, right? So there's a kind of the Goldilocks period where you could get a lot of followers for not a lot of effort. Now it's exactly the opposite. I think it's a grind. My follower account's not anywhere near close to yours or Zach's, for example, but it's just, I'm not going to post my salary on on LinkedIn either to get more followers. So,
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like I keep pretty low key, but but if you're just doing it kind of the normal blue collar route, it's going to take you forever. So, but I think it's fine. For me, I focus on quality of discussions and engagement versus number of followers. I mean, it's not really that important of a metric because it's, as you see, like it doesn't necessarily correlate with engagement either. In fact, there's almost an inverse correlation in some people. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And it depends on what you're trying to speak on.
yeah.
Right. Like, it's like, look, if you're trying to create intro content, there's always a massive audience
Hmm.
for that space. And if you want to be a little more nuanced and higher level, or talk about things that maybe take some time to get into, like, yeah, there's just a smaller and smaller like TAM that you're speaking to. So
Hmm. How do you decide what content you're going to produce?
that's a good question. Sometimes I just sit there and pound my head and I'm like, what am I going to write this week? I mean, I do think I try to follow a few themes. Like, I am trying to like speak a little bit higher level to like directors and managers these days. I think partially because that's, who I'm trying to attract from a consulting standpoint,
Hmm.
but also because I don't think like as much content gets written in that space, right? Like,
Right.
it's like, okay, there's a gajillion, Python 101 courses out there.
Hmm.
So especially for my written stuff, I like being a little more like nuanced, because again, I'm not as adherent to an algorithm, where it's like, again, on my YouTube, I'm still kind of intro-y, because it's like, yeah, like if I want people to see this stuff, I have to put it out, or I have to put out content that will get clicks.
Hmm.
Or you're going to get seen by 30 people, and that's
Yeah.
just how it is.
Well, that's like my videos, like the Monday morning data chat. That's the only thing we put on YouTube, and it's like the antithesis of what you should put on there. It's not algorithm friendly, and our views suck as a result. But we don't really care. We put it all on like Spotify, and views, listens are great there. But yeah, so with YouTube, for example, I mean, are you trying to package the content in such a way that it's algorithm friendly, or what's your approach there?
I mean, sometimes I've definitely like slowed down on YouTube. I think writing has
Mm,
kind of taken a front seat a little bit more for me. Like, I like it, doing it more. I also I've been doing like lives more often, which those are always fun. I think
yeah.
there's a lot to be gained from it. And like, yes, obviously you can gain a lot from a 10-minute video, but I think there are certain live chats that I've had with like Jeff. No, I always forget Jeff's last name, but he's like the director of architecture at Disney, and like you can just feel his experience. Like, you're talking to him, and you're like, we're not on the same level. like I want to listen to you all day, because we're like,
That's
you've
cool.
just been doing this so long that you've got a lot to say and a lot of thoughts, and I appreciate that. And I like the idea of like giving other people a platform, because it's like, look, as a content creator, like, I can only be so good at my craft because I spend some of my time creating content, right? Like, it's just hard to do everything. And so if I can
Yeah.
find people who don't want to create content, but have just honed their craft, and like that's what they love doing, and if I can give those people a platform, like that's something that I'd love to do more of.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I was on your live show a few months ago. That was a lot of fun.
Probably. So
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, I'm just a cranky old guy that just shows up and just rants at the sky the whole time and
That's
blurts.
that's all data people eventually. It's just like the cycle of being a person in data. Like you just slowly become a cranky old person. Like after about 10, 15 years, it's hard not to,
Yeah,
because it's just the same stuff every decade. So
it is.
you're just you just have a hard time not like being like, all right, let's do this all over again. In fact, I feel like every person that I've ever talked to that is, a few years older than me will often describe themselves as like, I am that old cranky person. I'm like, well, first
Yep.
of all, you're not old, but cranky I can see.
Right.
Uh,
Thank you, Ben.
yeah,
So no, but it's true, and I feel like the live format though, going back to that, it's an interesting one. It's not everyone's cup of tea for sure. I mean, I have a hard time. Like, I wouldn't say a hard time. We have a lot of people that want to do the Monday morning data chat for a while. It's booked out till almost January now. Um, and but it takes a certain personality to want to do a live show,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You have to be able to think in your feet, and that's not everyone's cup of tea. And especially like there's some people that I'd love to talk to, and they work at companies where live shows just ain't going to happen because everything has to go through comms and legal and all this other stuff. And ugh.
yeah,
So
yeah. I had actually a few things like that happen where I was like, oh, we were like set up to do things, and then suddenly legal saw the title and they're like, oh, they misunderstood a word, and they're like, no, can't do this chat. I'm like, had nothing to do with what you thought it was, but
did that ever
I
happen
get
with
it.
us? I can't remember.
I did that ever? I don't think so.
Okay.
I think the only chat that like I remember you ever missing was because it was a Las Vegas like panel that we were gonna do for Snowflake Summit. I'm not for Snowflake Summit, but outside of
At
Snowflake
Snowflake.
Summit.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. I can't
Yeah,
remember
and
where I went.
you got like delayed like 3 times from Utah and just couldn't make it. That's all I
That's what
remember.
happened. Yeah, flight
Yeah,
just
yeah.
wasn't ever going to show up. Yeah, and I think
So
Lauren Ballock took my place.
she did.
So, which
She
is
did.
kind of funny actually, because I got some crap from people saying, "Oh, it's a manel that you're on," and I was like, I'm not the
Yeah.
organizer. Please, just
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, I'm like, "Well, Lauren's on the panel now. Have fun." So, and I don't know how that panel went. I heard it was. I imagine it was fireworks for sure.
It was fine. It was fine.
Yeah,
But it was funny when you like look at that. You're like, yeah, how did we get like 7 guys on this panel
I
and not
know.
one woman?
It is what it
This is
is.
weird, guys. This is a little weird.
It is.
But
It was a bit weird. I was looking forward to going down there, but it's I mean, it is what it is. So
it's a summit. They're all the same. Or something,
they're all the same.
kind of the same.
Yeah. Are you gonna be at reInvent?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Chad Sanderson just asked me if I'm going to do that. I'm like, I don't think so.
Oh, you should come by. Yeah.
It's in Vegas.
Yeah.
Maybe.
End of month.
It's
Yeah,
not
28.
that far.
Yeah, it's not that far. I mean, it's only like a 50-minute flight for me, so it'd be dumb not to show up. So, but for conferences, I don't even go to the. I rarely get a conference pass. I just show up for the events and maybe take meetings at the. Especially if it's in Vegas, there's a lot of good restaurants there, so just go get a bite to eat or go get a drink, and
You're just going the VC route, huh?
apparently, yeah, is that what they do?
I just remember, what was it? The data council, they like teased about that like all of the VCs like didn't pay for passes, which they were like $3,000 or $4,000 a person for VCs. So it's like, yeah, they didn't pay for passes, but so they were like making jokes like, yeah, don't accidentally walk into a mysterious VC van or something. Like, don't be attracted. I'm like, yeah.
They have like a dollar bill on a hooked to a fishing pole. What do you call that? Bum fishing, I think it was back in the day. Yeah, founder fishing. Oh, that's funny.
Just $1 million check.
Just like they chase it down the street into a crappy white van. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, what are your thoughts on conference? Are you more of an online person, or do you tend to travel and get out more and do in-person stuff? What's your mix?
Yeah, currently it's definitely more online. I mean, that could be more of a function that this year got married and like.
Oh, congrats, by the way.
So
Yep.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, so like that kind of like you're like, okay, I've done enough exciting things for the year. Let's and then I've got like not a second honeymoon, but an actual honeymoon plan. The first one was just here locally to get away.
So, go to like Casa Bonita or something.
No. What do you call it? Steamboat Springs.
Oh, nice. That's a good area.
Yeah. So it was nice. It was nice. But so we've got that plan, and so it's a lot of little things. I think next year will be a little more travel heavy. I imagine. I'm talking to some companies to do some course stuff, some training. So like that might have some stuff. But overall, I don't know. I can get a lot done from where I'm at, which is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. I travel so much that it's the getting things done part is like it's a big challenge for sure. So I mean, I have a whole like portable studio now to, a whole setup there, but it took a long time to figure out like what works and what's, what to ditch. So, but
yeah. I know you've got like a few projects in the works, so I'm just like, how does
yeah,
he get any of that stuff done when he's like having to juggle, all these other commitments?
you get a lot done on the plane is what you do.
Uh,
So for an overseas trip, like I can go direct from Salt Lake to Europe, and it's like that's about a 9 to 10 hour flight. And depending on the time you land, you actually want to stay up no matter what time it is when you left, because that's the rookie mistake is to crash, right? If it's going to be daytime there when you get there, so you're just going to be really cracked out. But yeah, planes, and then you just got to be pretty ruthless. If you're in a hotel, either you're saving off jet lag or you're working. That's
yeah. You and was it Jepson?
Yeah, Taylor.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does he actually go by Jepson? I don't actually know.
I don't know. He's like one of my good friends from back in the day, and I know him as Ben, and I cannot force myself to call him Jepson no matter what. So yeah. But anyway,
I didn't know how official that was or not. So I was like, is that like a thing or is that a troll?
He could legally change his name, and I still call him Ben, so it wouldn't matter. Anyway, what we're saying.
He's always traveling too. Like I'm just like, this guy must be so exhausted.
Oh yeah, he was sending me pictures from South Africa this morning. So he's
gosh.
Yeah. I mean, his travel schedule this fall is insane. I mean, even by my standards, it was like, damn, it's a lot. So, but the travel thing is interesting. I feel like, I mean, you and I have like I don't know, it's interesting. We talk to the same audiences. I find like the travel is interesting because then you can do more grassroots type stuff where, virtual, it's a bit harder to do that. Like an example is when I was in Bangalore recently, speaking at the data engineering conference there, it was super cool just to meet practitioners and people you would never ever get a chance to meet. All they would be on, might be an avatar on a virtual show, but that was priceless to be there. They were really stoked to finally meet somebody they'd see online. I think the downside is just to get there is a 20+ hour flight, not including layovers. It's driving in Bangalore is absolutely horrendous. Like, you'll see if you ever go there. And so it's just, there's definitely trade-offs, right? But that's, I'm thankful that, my spouse afforded me the time to do this kind of stuff and, take advantage. But, next half of next year, I'm travel is pretty minimal, by comparison, because I got to hunker down and get things done. So, but for you, it's like, I think, the Seattle Data Guide World Tour would be sick. Everyone be you have a keys to the city offered to you by the mayor. And
Sure. Like I said, it's like whatever Z-level celebrity status, right? Like you're known by a very, very small slice of a small slice of a small slice.
Yeah. Like guys like you, I think we call it nerd famous. Like you're,
probably. Yeah,
but you're not like Bono or somebody who,
No. Oh God, no, not even close. And like famous is even the right word, right? Because it's like, I imagine it's just like people know that you exist, whereas like, there's like an adoration for a movie star, which whether that's well placed or not is a different point. But
no, I would say that there is a certain level of it's a weird thing. I think there is like nerd stardom. I'm dead serious. Like, and I'll give you examples. Like it's you'll see people will be taking selfies with you, right? They'll come, or they'll do the side picture, which is an interesting one. Like, hey, it's Ben. Like, get a pic of him and stuff, and it will happen to you. I guarantee it. Like, because people do know who you are, and I don't know, it's the weirdest thing. I remember like when my book took off, Scott Taylor, the data whisperer, he pulled me aside and he's like, this is what you're going to be experiencing is a weird form of celebrity. It's not, you're not famous, but you are going to be known. And so you just have to kind of get used to this. And so you'll experience it, when you leave your house, probably not go to the grocery store, but you go to an event. I think, because you have a massive following, right? So it's something that I think will be very weird to you probably at first. Just like I'm Ben, I'm a nerd, leave me alone. But It is what it is. So, but how do you deal with that online though? It's like I mean, you're definitely popular online. Like, how do you deal with the constant inbound and attention?
Yeah, I mean, I try to like for 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 reach outs that make sense. Like if people inbound me and like it's not simply a tell me how to get a job
Mm.
response. Like the classic like how do I get hired? And you're just like I have videos, I have articles. I
Yeah, you
can't
do actually.
respond to.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I can't respond to all of these things. It's not personal. It's just like that's literally why like we create content is because content is scalable. And I wanted to answer this question and I did. And I don't want to have to try to
Right.
answer it again. If things make sense, maybe then I'll try to connect with people. I I don't know. There's a lot of ignoring, and again, it's not personal. It's just like if you responded to every message anyone
Yep.
ever sent you, like I'm sure you have 10 plus a day
Yep.
just in LinkedIn, and then another 10 plus a day on your emails or wherever. Yeah, like it just is too much, and you'd never find sanity.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, I mean it's one of those things where it's like everyone that asks you for a quick 15 minutes, like if I did the math, that this would be my job.
It would be.
Um,
Hmm.
and I don't want to charge, like I don't even want to charge you as much as I charge clients, so like I feel bad.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do that.
No, I totally get it. I mean, I had to put a note up a few months ago, just saying like, meetings are basically from here on like not happening. So, just because you're right, it's a time suck, and I think part of that's like with Ternary, we sort of you know got kind of drove down services a lot just because we didn't really want to keep doing that stuff, and then but a lot of those are like partner talks and sales
Yeah,
conversations and stuff. I'm just like I don't know, I'm just glad to not have to deal with it. It's such cognitive dissonance too, on top
yeah,
of all the other inbound that you get. Because I'm sure you get a ton, and I do too. And it's a lot of it's all the same kind of advice too, which is why I'm just like, go read chapter 4 of the book if you want to know my thoughts on this. They haven't really changed, right? And
yeah,
I mean, so same reason you probably do videos, just kind of write once, and it's a one to many problem, right? Whereas if you're consulting or you're taking calls, it's a one to one problem. And I think you have a platform where the one to many solution is probably a lot more effective.
yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. So that's the one
yeah,
I tend to lean into.
that's interesting. Speaking of business, like business models, for example, like if you can talk about that, like what is the business model that you have?
Yeah, I mean I think right now that it's a pretty traditional consulting business model, right? Like find clients, do the work that they ask for, get paid. Uh, I haven't like gone full agency. Like I do have a few people that I bring on to some of the projects, but generally it's mostly been me. Obviously there's like a few other sources of income, but like that's the majority. Like and it's hard for me to separate from that sometimes. And I think, obviously I think we've talked about this before. Like there's obviously this opportunity for like a one to many type of situation. I think I'm still trying to figure that out because yeah, like consulting is great, and that's something that it's one reason that I've like put together a quick course on that for people because I think
Yeah,
it's like look, if you want to make a lot of money very quickly with yeah you won't have a product. I think that's always the thing that you need to realize. You won't have a product, there's nothing to sell, but you can make a lot of money with little overhead and very little risk to yourself in terms of like what like expenses and like things like that. Consulting is great. um but again, it's a trade off. It's a one to one. You can only charge so much per hour till eventually people are like, I don't want to pay that. And you're like,
yep.
all right, well, guess that's the limit of what people want to pay. So your growth is limited eventually. So
Hmm.
that's always a trade off.
How did you get into consulting?
Honestly, it was on accident. Like I was working my first job, and I had someone ask me to do some help. They needed help migrating an Access database to SQL Server um, for a client that they had. So they were more of like a finance kind of CFO, fractional CFO, and it was part of the project. And so like I came in and I did that. I remember that like first year because I was making about $60,000 a year at my full time job, and I made about $60,000 a year consulting. And I
Mm.
was like, oh, this is what I should do. The next year, I made like 10K because obviously my friend had no more work for me, and so I was like, oh, okay, I need to figure out how to like keep this keep this thing going. I can't just like expect things to come. So I think that's
Right.
when I started digging more into like how do you actually get clients to want to work with you, and things like that. So that's kind of where a lot of the content originally spurred from. I was already like
Interesting.
writing content, but like really like going even more on it. Like because I was also writing content around food because I used to work in fine dining.
Oh, interesting.
And I had a very terrible blog somewhere on food.
I mean, like
And then
what
like I was like,
blog?
this is fun. Let's just do it. And then so then I just kind of converted some of that time to writing about technology and more data and things like that.
Interesting. So this is like the origin of the origin story of the Seattle data guy. If we were looking at the kind of the Marvel journey of the character, yeah,
Sure. Yeah, you can
food
call it
blogger
the
to
origin story.
let me see. You're an ex fine dining
Well,
cook. I'm looking at this, and you used to be a ex fine dining cook.
yeah, it used to be. I worked at a few places in Seattle. So if you live in Seattle, if you know like Cafe Juanita, or it's called Luke, although I don't think it's open anymore. And actually, Terry Rodero, who was the chef in the hat, sadly just passed away like
Oh
yesterday.
no!
Yeah.
Oh
Like so,
wow!
he was like this French chef that I worked for,
Oh,
who
that's
was the
sad.
most French person you ever like said things that were totally inappropriate. Like he was. I remember like I was baking cookies one day because like for the whatever I was working like garde manger, which is like essentially salads. And I was like, "Are these cookies dark enough, chef? Or like are they cooked well enough?" And he's like, he looked at them. He's like, he basically said, "I don't want to cook cookies that look like my ass," like saying that it's too white, it's not dark.
That's very French.
So yeah, it was very funny. But yeah, so sadly, he passed away.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah,
sad.
so that was one of them. So yeah, Cafe Juanita, Luke. Herb Farm is another one out in Woodinville that I kind of ended my career on, and I was like, I'm not making enough money. I won't be able to support a family on this, going forward. So I need to make some changes.
Interesting. So you could have been a cranky French cook.
I could have been a very cranky, probably borderline alcoholic cook just to like deal with the fact that I mean like it's like look like it's not easy. So it's
Oh
like
no!
you gotta pick up some sort of something to like you love the craft, but it definitely takes a lot out of
Well, I've
you.
worked
And
in restaurants before. It's a stressful
yeah,
environment, like very
yeah,
stressful.
yeah,
Like you're basically hauling ass the whole time. There's no, yeah. I mean, everyone either smokes or drinks a lot. From what I saw, this is back in the day. But
yeah. And
yeah,
I
interesting.
love that you have the Mac thing too.
Yeah, I think I need to turn that off. Actually, yeah. So the audience, this is audio only, but the reactions on Mac are
Weird.
they're weird. Yeah. Um, That's pretty cool. And then, okay, so Cook. Okay, so we're gonna dive into the origin story of Seattle Data Guy real quick here because I find this pretty
Sure.
fascinating. So you're born maybe as an orphan or something. I'm just kidding. Then
No.
then you're a cook, and then you got into data. How?
Yeah, I mean, so I had done 2 years of college between my what do you call it? June was it? Is it freshman and junior? Yeah, junior and senior year. I basically did two years of college, and so I when I was 20, it's when I decided to like go back essentially and like, all right, let's
Mm,
finish my last 2 years. And so I got a degree in information systems essentially. I started like I think hearing about data science while I was still in college. I like took some courses on like bioinformatics, some statistics, and a few other like programming courses. And so I think like many people, right, like in that time, I was like, this is what I want to do. So yeah, like I mean that kind of started it. It was like college was like, all right, let's just start pushing in this direction. Got my first job at a hospital. Was more of like a just do everything technical person, right? Like building the website, building
yeah.
dashboards, managing what our kind of weird data warehouse that we've kind of like morphed off of the actual data warehouse. Because originally there was someone that was in charge of me, like a senior engineer. They left.
Oh, one of those.
One of those, right? Like they left, leaving me, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll just take this person that was essentially an intern about 3 months ago, and you'll just do everything now. So kind of just trying to manage all of that. Yeah, and then eventually was like, yeah, this is one. I wasn't getting paid that much better, honestly, than my
Mm.
yeah. And two, I was like, well, I'm not learning anything here because there's no one above me to like really work with. So just eventually looked for a new role, found data engineering itself as a role, and then kind of went from there.
Interesting. And then where did content come into this? Because you had a day job. Were you doing the content before consulting or after consulting?
I don't remember if I started like because of consulting. Because again, I was already creating content, again around food, but like, and so I might have just like started writing before even
Mm.
consulting, or I might have started writing because I read there was a book called like $1 Million Consultant or
Oh, from
something.
Alan Weiss. Great book, by the way, if you want to
Exactly,
do consulting.
exactly.
Yeah, great
Yeah.
book.
Every time I bring it up, everyone's like, "Yeah, I know exactly the book." Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's kind of
Alan
a
Weiss.
douchebag in the book,
Oh yeah.
but great book.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly. So it's a solid book. And like I think he talks about like the whole like content cycle where it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you have work, that work gives you ideas to write content, you write that content, people are interested because you're answering the exact problems they have, because there's generally some thematic things and problems people have. So then you get more work, you can get new problems, and you can
Yep.
just continue that cycle. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just write about the things I'm dealing with and what I'm learning and what I'm doing, and go from there.
Interesting. And when about was that when you started doing like data specific content?
I want to say it was like 2017,
Okay.
probably. Yeah. At this point, it's getting so far back there that it's like, when was, when was all this?
1817.
Yeah,
That's when yeah, because I think you came under my radar. It must have been 2018 or 2019, I think.
probably,
Because there wasn't a
probably.
lot of data engineering content out there at the time. I mean, it was you, Andreas Kretz, maybe. I don't think Zach was really on the scene yet. But trying to think, I was doing some stuff, and then crap, Maxime Bouchemin, I think, had an article on data engineering, and that was about
Yes,
it.
yes. He had a few classic articles
Hmm.
that are all on, I think, still Medium. Which,
Yeah,
yeah, I think he's got like a few like is data engineering dying? Is data engineering like the best job ever? Kind of
this was
articles.
back in 2017, I think, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy, right? Like you read these articles, and because that's really when that role fully started to crystallize. So
Hmm. It seemed to have been, I think it started getting a name and all that stuff. So I think around that time, Martin Kleppman's book came out too, Designing Data Intensive Applications. And that, even though that was like a software engineering book, it was never meant for data people. It ended up becoming, I guess, the book for data engineers, for a really long time. And so it's interesting, kind of that whole period where this field, because I think I had just started a data engineering consultancy back in 2017, I think.
yeah,
Yeah. And so after years of, I guess, doing it, but not knowing what the hell it was called, but I don't know. But, you know,
yes.
whatever. Now it's popular. So, yeah, walk me through that though. I mean, because, I have my view on data engineering sort of from that time to today, but when did you feel like data engineering started becoming more than just a few random dudes on the internet ranting about it?
Um, I did a history of kind of like data engineering, and I feel like somewhere, right, like you definitely started seeing the role start to exist. I want to say like it was 2015, or like I think the role started earlier, but like
Yeah.
really started finding some footing. But like yeah, it really found, I think, its footing like 2017, 2018. That's when
Hmm.
people are like, oh, this is a role that I can do, and it gets paid decently well, right? Um, and I know it's definitely a role around then, because 2018, I think, I want to say it's the year when Airbnb wrote their article about data quality, where they
Mm.
discussed how they got rid of data engineering essentially, or at least didn't put it to the level of importance
Hmm.
that most people probably should, and then quickly found that they should probably have data engineers, because asking data, and it has nothing to do with data scientists. I think this is always, I always feel like people might take me the wrong way. It's like it has nothing to do with data scientists and software engineers not being able to do the work. It just has to do with the fact that they're focused on different things. It's like,
Yep.
do you want them doing that work, or do you want them doing something else?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. But yeah, somewhere in there, probably 2015, 2017.
Yeah, because it was the old trope that like 80, what's it? A data scientist been like 80, 90% of the time getting data, cleaning data, and all the stuff that really should be the job of a data engineer to provide them that data that they can then use to do their job. So the lines were definitely blurred back then. I mean, I got into it because I was hired to do machine learning work and that kind of stuff. And then lo and behold, there's no data upon which to do the data science, and now I have to figure that part out because I'm not going to just sit there twiddling my thumbs waiting for it to happen. So
Yeah.
that's that's how I got into it. That's where the recovering data scientist moniker comes from.
Yeah.
Just that whole thing, but yeah, it's interesting. And then from there, I guess, 2020 to, I mean, the COVID times. I mean, I think that's where you blew up.
Yeah, I think I made, I don't even know if I was just like pushing more on content or YouTube. I did decide to finally switch to YouTube
Yeah.
and start putting out YouTube content because like for the longest time I was just like, no, I don't want to do YouTube. Like I don't want my face being everywhere. Writing is nice. Yeah, but then I saw like a bunch of people writing like analytics content or YouTube content on data analytics. I'm like, oh, okay, like I can do some of this. I can do that. Um, so yeah, so I started putting out content. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I have some traction. There is an appetite for this stuff, and people do want this role. So yeah, I think that definitely helped. I think people are finally starting to figure out that there's more than one way you can have or find Seattle data guy. Because like for the longest time, people were like, oh, I've read your written content forever. I didn't know you started a
Oh,
YouTube channel, which makes sense. It's like, yeah,
yeah.
that makes sense. You can live in totally different worlds. I remember like when Dev 2, I don't even know if I just don't go on Dev 2 anymore, but like when Dev 2 started, I reposted a few of my Medium articles on there and they would like blow up just like they had been first written. And then I was like, oh, there are millions of people out there that will read this content, and Medium
Yeah.
is only one place that, you might get found. So yeah, you can totally put this content everywhere. And so
Hmm.
same thing with like YouTube. It's like you could have one audience on YouTube and have a totally different audience somewhere else that doesn't know you exist.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
I was just explaining to my wife. I don't know if you know Filthy Frank. It's a
Uh-uh.
YouTuber. No, okay. He was like a very like 2013 comedy YouTuber, like very cringy, very like if you watched it, you'd be like, this makes me uncomfortable. And
Oh,
then he converted eventually. He somehow converted that into like a music career, and a lot of people didn't even realize that he had this whole other persona prior to that was very very different to what his current persona is. So
interesting.
yeah. So it's like, yeah, it's interesting. You can kind of live in different worlds.
Hmm. Yeah.
um,
That's really interesting. Yeah, because the LinkedIn crowd, for example, they're not the YouTube crowd. Like these crowds, I think somewhat intersect, but they're not. Because I know a lot of friends that are really big on YouTube, for example, and their LinkedIn, I would say, is their activity is pretty light. They may have a lot of followers, but
yeah,
I think that's more because people chose to follow them on that platform. But these people rarely post on there, right? Because they're
yeah,
video people. That's what they do.
yeah,
They're not, they don't write.
yeah,
So just how it is. Like I was listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast last night with this interview with Morgan Housel, this author, and the author was actually asking Tim Ferriss. I don't know if you know Tim Ferriss, as he wrote the 4 Hour Work Week, and has a
yeah,
very, I think his podcast has like 1 billion plus downloads, which is
yeah,
insane. But the question really came up, like, would you rather be writing right now or doing podcasts, right? And so it's an interesting one. I think because it's not like these things are necessarily correlated. You could be great at one and not the other. Tim happened to be really successful at both, but I think he prefers doing the podcast. But the book is what kind of got him here, so we couldn't have gotten there without it. But
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's different.
Yeah, and I do think like this is why like sometimes I'm kind of pulling off of YouTube as much because it's like you kind of do need to focus on somewhere, right? Like I think
Yeah,
the Pragmatic Engineer is a good example of that,
he's
where
great.
he's great. He's got amazing written content, 500,000, right, like or more than that I think right now in terms of like subscribers. But his YouTube channel I think has like 60, 70, around what mine has. It's not nothing, like to be clear, like it's hard to get even 1,000 people to follow you
Yeah.
on YouTube, but like you'd expect there to be some sort of similarity, but it's hard. It's hard to do everything really well.
Hmm.
Um, so I think he made the right choice by picking written content, and again, I think it's also because his content isn't geared towards doing well on YouTube. Like it's like really long form,
Hmm.
really well researched, like stuff that you really would have to work to fit into the YouTube algorithm, right? Like you'd have to become, is it Johnny Harris or whoever that guy is that like does like these really well like edited videos and to explain some very nuanced concept with like a ton
Mm.
of research. But it's like they can do well, but it just takes so much effort.
It's a lot of effort. And I think at the same time, writing is one of the clearest ways to just explain ideas very plainly,
Yeah,
right? Because with video, now you're having to figure out the visual and audio elements to it as well as the narrative. And it's more of it's more movie making, in my opinion, or it's definitely a story arc, but you have to be good at
yeah,
storytelling as well. Whereas writing is simply just, here's my thoughts, write it as cleanly as you can, but it's I would say it's simple and it's really difficult to write
yeah,
well. Anyone can write, but to write well, just I think it's creating like a video like you just described. That's insanely difficult to do.
yeah,
That's why he's very popular, probably because he does it. And same with audio and written. Like who was it? Ben Thompson from Stratechery. If you follow that, have you ever
yeah,
followed those guys? I mean, that guy I read is like pulling over 4 million a year off his newsletter,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Sure,
And
sure,
it's
yeah,
the best content you'll find for whatever he's talking about. I mean, I listened to his podcast before he put it under a paywall, like religiously, and it was amazing. Like easily the best. I probably still pay for it, but I pay for so many subscriptions at this point. It's like I just, you know,
yeah. We need a new business model. We need something that like people want to, or maybe like newsletters need to start like bundling. That's something I've thought about recently. It's
yeah,
like maybe we like you just need to start bundling with like other newsletters, and I Substack should do that.
you really
Does
should.
Substack have that? Should be a feature of Substack. Like hey, I want to bundle my service with like another person, and then like split it for us. Like don't let us have to split it.
Yep.
Like I'm totally okay with like, hey, if I'm the draw, like, because it's one of those things where it's like you might be the bigger draw, but maybe the reason someone's not converting is just because like, well, I don't want to pay for these two things. So it's like
Right.
you might still like if you give them more options, it might be something that they
I
want.
think it'd be
So
great.
yeah, I could see that being like a thing, like in the future. It's like you want the data engineering newsletter Substack, here you go. We'll pay these people. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it'd be
so
dope. Yeah, yeah, that's kind of cool. Like, as far as projects go, can you talk about anything it's upcoming that you're stoked on?
I mean, I don't know in details I can get. I mean,
Perfectly fine.
it's your standard stuff, like cloud migrations,
Yeah.
updating infrastructure, trying to figure out how to reduce people's infrastructure costs. A lot of people are. Did you see that recent article from someone saying I accidentally saved my company $500,000?
No. Tell me more.
Oh my, this article is hilarious. So this person came in, just started a company. They have Snowflake. They're spending $1 million a year essentially on Snowflake. They come in and within like 2 days, they figure out, oh, all of the warehouses are set to idle for 10 minutes after you've run a query. What if I set it to 1?
Yeah.
And saves essentially $500,000.
Whoa.
And now his company or their company, I don't actually know if it's him or her, saves their company $500,000. And now their management doesn't want them to like make that known really fast because it's like, they're already getting questions like, how did this happen? How did someone just get hired? And they immediately like, what were you not doing that someone just came in essentially and fixed this problem? So there's like that stuff too, where it's like, I think you said this once, like if you think Snowflake is expensive, it's because you're using it wrong. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah. And it's like same thing with like all these solutions. Like there's often an affordable way of using them. I don't want to call anyone out, but it's like, yeah, there's like all these solutions. It's like, yeah, you can totally like cut a lot of your bills in half or in third if you find a better solution. If you don't idle things, if you aren't like real time is great, but like it's very expensive on Snowflake. Like all of this stuff is just like, hey, you can fix these. It's not hard.
Oh no, they actually have Snowflake. Incidentally, has documentation on how to do this stuff.
Yeah,
the way they say you should do it. I think where I see people getting into trouble is when they try and have an opinion.
Yeah,
that goes against the official recommendations, and then what do you think is going to happen? I mean, it's no different than if your doctor or the medical community suggests something and you think you have an opinion about it. I suppose you can deal with the consequence if you want to take a different route.
Yeah.
Playing in traffic, that's not a good idea. But that's what happens all the time. I think is what I see with data engineers, especially, is you don't want to stay idle, right? You want to keep yourself busy. You want to look smart. And what the engineer you mentioned, I think they did that right. It's like, okay, so 10 minutes, 1 minute. Let's subtract those 9 minutes and see what we can do here. Like that's the simple stuff. But I think all too often engineers want to come and do a lot of heroics. It's like, oh, let's set up an awesome streaming system in here.
Yeah.
And it's, even though we may not need it. So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was gonna say I've been
Always.
thinking about recently about like putting out an article like basically something along the lines of like data engineering is all about discipline. It's like
Yep.
we all want to like solve these cool problems, but honestly, 80% of probably 90% of the work that we need to do, and at most companies, has nothing to do with like the cool stuff that we read about. Like I get that we all want to do it. We all want to like use Flink and whatever. But most of the problems that we have to solve and most of the ways that we have to do things well have nothing to do with it and everything to do with very basic things. Naming things well, making sure you're not, again, idling for too long. Very boring things, and data modeling well. Nothing that's exciting, nothing that sounds like super sexy. And I think that, yeah, like it's like you don't have to be smart. You just have to be disciplined, which is hard. I mean, like it's definitely easier to just be like, I'll just do this quickly, and then that way I can get to the fun thing that I want to do.
Right. It's interesting. That's an interesting take on it. It reminds me a lot of how Warren Buffett describes good investing, which is like 90% of it is just emotional control and discipline, and just like not. I guess the way he puts it is, you become successful by avoiding stupid things, not by trying to be smart.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think it's a great way of putting it. You create great data infrastructure by avoiding stupid mistakes and not trying to be smart. It's like,
yeah,
like there are, like I think you've talked about this. There are ways that are the way you do things.
Yes,
and there are reasons we do them this way. You are not that much smarter for thinking you've come up with a new way. And most likely, if you've come up with a new way, it's probably not a new way. It's probably something that someone else figured out 30 times over. So
yeah. Please write that article. I think it needs to be said. Well, and I think it's the time is right though, because the conversations, I'm sure you've noticed in the data engineering space, they've gone from, hey, what tools should I be using for my modern data stack, to, gosh, my modern data stack's on fire right now. Help me out here, right? I mean, that's a discussion that I see happening right now. But the pendulum always goes from, I think, tooling to practices and then back, and then it'll be a new set of tools in a few years that'll be amazing, and we'll be enamored with them, and we'll go back to that discussion, and that'll
be the answer, and then we'll eventually be like, no, it wasn't the answer. We were misled. We followed false idols again. The vendor's pitch was too good. I think that's always the thing. It's like I mean, like even like I'll sit on a vendor pitch, and it's like, yeah, this sounds amazing, right? It's like they work on it. They make sure they know all the problems you have. They've done all their research in terms of like understanding who you are.
Yep.
They know your problems. They know how to speak to them. And they know what you want to hear. They're good at selling it.
There's some great salespeople.
Yeah. Which, again, I think you had a point recently where you're like, yeah, they when they are at job A, their solution A is amazing. When they're at job B, solution B is amazing. And look, that's their job. Never get in between someone and their bread, but it's just how it is.
That's just reality of it, right? So that's what I say. Yeah, I mean, the advice to anyone listening to you, especially if you're a practitioner, not a salesperson, but you have to talk to salespeople, is definitely understand. They're here to get paid. That's how it is. It's a transaction, and so they're gonna tell you what you want. And when they switch jobs, they're gonna do the same thing with a different product, and that's gonna be the greatest thing too. So just understand that's how the game works, and that's how it's played, and and then you're a part of that game. You as the engineer or the manager, or whoever is, you're directly complicit in this game by taking the call. So
yes, and at the end of the day, it's how they're motivated. Like, look, they need to get paid.
Yep.
Like they have bills. Like, they're trying not to get fired.
Yeah.
Like, if you think it's hard, like if you think your job is hard, imagine like every quarter you're looked at and like, you did great last quarter, but this quarter you missed your target by like 30%.
Yeah.
Whether that's because of you or because the people that you were, you're just on a long sales cycle. Like, yeah. Well, sorry. You're gone.
Can you imagine better? Can you imagine if dating or marriage was like that?
Yeah. Oh man.
It's a quarterly review, Ben. I know we've only been married for about 3 months now, but it's time to. So yeah, that'd be. but no, that's the reality of it. And again, I think salespeople and marketing, they have their place in the cycle. It's like I know a lot of awesome salespeople that have actually truly helped their clients out, right? And you want to
Yeah.
steer your way towards working with people of integrity and character at all times. But for as many as those there are in the world, there's just about 10 times as many people who probably aren't like that. So that's reality. And anyway, it's neither here nor there. It's just have the discipline, according to the article that Ben's coming out with. Well, awesome. I know we're coming up on time, man. I want to let you get on with your day, but yeah, thanks for the chat, dude. So
Always love it. Always love chatting. I think this is, like I said, the long form content's always fun to do, even if it's just two people talking about. I don't know. We talked about
all
like
kinds of
7
shit.
different subjects here, so
yeah,
great.
At least. So awesome. Well, I'll put your I guess your contact in the show notes. People can find you on LinkedIn, YouTube. Where else? Substack.
Substack. I think that's kind of the main places. I mean that I've got going right now. So
yeah, not TikTok. So
not. I don't know. I have like some short form videos. I try it out. It's just another piece of content that I need to put out, and I'm like, I got to focus in on what I'm doing.
One more thing. Yeah, I know what you mean. So awesome, dude. Well, anyway, it's good to chat, man. So have a great day. See you later.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye.